relax, sit down. Just pick your feet up and breathe. Come on and smile. Don't frown. Don't get in an uproar and leave. Now, I don't mean to analyze you like some knockoff Sigmund Freud. They may be out to get you, but don't get so paranoid. Come on, relax. Sit down and have another drink on me.
Hello out there in podcast land. Welcome to episode 5 of volume 2 of Dead Kitchen Radio, the Keith R. A. DeCandido podcast. I am, of course, Keith R. A. DeCandido. First of all, I am now a married man. Well, I am now again a married man. This is actually my second marriage, but as of the 22nd of April, 2017, I am married to my longtime fiancée, now wife, Ren Sims. The wedding was glorious, and we are deliriously happy. Secondly, I've got a new novel out this month. Now, that's not unusual. I've written a lot of novels, and, they have to come out sometime, but this one in particular is what I'm talking about this month on Dead Kitchen Radio. My interest in Norse mythology is pretty obvious if you've read my Cassie Zukov stories. That series of tales, set in Key West, Florida, includes several members of the Norse pantheon, among them Loki, Odin, Thor, Sigyn, and Tyr. But that interest got its start by reading Marvel Comics, which I've been doing since I was very small. The Marvel versions of the Norse pantheon only bear a passing resemblance to the myths. In the myths, Thor is a redhead, not a blonde, and is much more of an asshole. Loki's more trickster than figure of evil, and he's the blood brother to Odin, not the adopted brother of Thor. Sif is actually Thor's wife, rather than his on-again, off-again love interest, and the Warriors 3 are completely made up by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby with no analog in Norse legend at all. Having said that, Marvel's version of Asgard has always been compelling and fun. Marvel's history with prose is lengthy and kind of scattershot. The first Marvel novels were published in the late 1960s, and they featured Captain America and the Avengers, 2 different novels, one featuring each. There was a line of a dozen or so books that was published in the 1970s, which was mostly written by comics writers, and then there was an extensive line that I edited from 1994 to 2000, which included more than 50 books. Since then, several other publishers have done runs of Marvel novels, most notably Marvel themselves, putting out novel adaptations of comic stories via their Marvel Press imprint. After Disney acquired Marvel, Joe Books, a Canadian publisher, acquired the rights to do prose versions of basically all of Disney's properties save Star Wars, as well as comics versions of some other Disney properties. Marvel was part of the prose end of that, and as part of that program, I was hired to write a trilogy called Tales of Asgard, which features Thor in the first book, Sif in the second book, and the Warriors 3 in the third book, which is the one that's coming out this month. For the first 2 books, the Thor novel was entitled Dueling with Giants, and then the Sif novel, which was called Even Dragons Have Their Endings, I was inspired by actual Norse myths. The Thor novel is a Marvelized version of the story of Hrungnir, a frost giant who was humiliated by a disguised Odin and then later dueled Thor while wearing enchanted stone armor. For Sif's novel, I adapted the story of Fafnir the dragon and how he and his brothers were cursed after stealing gold from dwarves. In both cases, I took liberties with the original myths, partly to make them more in line with Marvel's version of Asgard. For example, Fafnir is a completely different character in Marvel's version of Asgard, so I had to rework that element of it. And Loki plays a much bigger role in the Hrungnir story than he did in the original myths. But also in both cases, it was a tremendous fun to just write these noble heroes, along with Thor dealing with his treacherous adopted brother Loki, Sif dealing with the problems of being a woman in a culture in which most warriors are men. For the third book, I went with a more traditional quest narrative. I figured the Warriors 3 were best suited to this type of thing. I set it up so that the golden apples of immortality were stolen, and Fandral, Hogun, and Volstagg, the Warriors 3, are tasked with getting them back, encountering many issues along the way. The Warriors 3 are a delightful addition to the Marvel Universe, so much so that they were also included in the first 2 Thor movies. It remains to be seen whether or not they'll be in Thor Ragnarok out this fall. Fandral is basically Robin Hood, the dashing adventurer. Volstagg is basically Falstaff, the overweight old warrior who is more comfortable boasting than fighting. As for Hogun, while the Marvel Cinematic Universe made him into an Asian warrior, Stan Lee's initial inspiration for the character was actually Charles Bronson. Either way, he's the strong, silent warrior. Stereotypes, yes, but those can be fun too. And writing the banter among these three old friends was an absolute joy. In particular, I had the most fun writing Volstagg, who is one of the few characters, besides Thor and Sif, who appears in all three books. Volstagg was originally written as a figure of fun, someone who was too cowardly to actually fight, but more than happy to boast of past conquests and never actually participate in the battle. Under the tutelage of Walt Simonson, whose run on the Thor in the comics in the 1980s remains the definitive take on the characters, Volstagg was redeemed somewhat as more of an elder statesman. He'd been around longer than most, and he was truly a great warrior once, but he also is the only one of the main characters who has a family, as he has a wife and many children. This was originally portrayed as why he went along with Fandral and Hogun, to get away from his nagging wife, a tiresome sexist stereotype that was typical of the 1960s. I did play with that particular notion in the third book in the trilogy, as well as Volstagg's cleverness. I'm not going to give away the first part. That plays heavily into the climax of the novel and may constitute a spoiler, but on this episode of Dead Kitchen Radio, I will be reading the 8th chapter of the novel, which shows off Volstagg's brains over his brawn. And so, without further ado, here is Chapter 8 of Marvel's Warriors 3, Godhood's End.
And then, of course, I had to teach the brigand a lesson. No one insults my Gudrun and gets away with it for long, and so I thrashed him within an inch of his life. Fandral chuckled at Volstagg's words as they traveled the road that would take them around the final mountain before entering Jotunheim. Was that before or after one of your hands was bound behind your back? Volstagg harumphed. Have you not been paying attention? Both my hands were tied behind my back. The trio rode single file along a path that went around the mountain. It was barely wide enough for the horses, with the mountain on one side of the path, and only a cliff and air on the other side. Hogun took the lead, keeping a keen eye out for any more ambushes. Fandral took the middle, being amused by Volstagg's latest story of daring do. Astride iron shanks, Volstagg took up the rear, as was his wont. The uncharitable would say that he always chose to take up the rear out of cowardice, or because his bulk made it necessary for him to lag behind. Volstagg himself always insisted that it was safer for his opponents if he was kept from thrashing them all alone. So, Fandral said, if both your hands were bound behind your back, and assuming that your hands could actually be brought to meet behind your girth, how precisely did this thrashing occur? With kicks of great strength and power, of course. As a youth long ago, I was trained in the art of kicking by the legendary Sparka, master of the pedal arts. Employing the training given me by that great practitioner, I was able to smash the fool's leg with a kick to the knee, then quite literally take his breath away by directing my foot into his belly. He doubled over, trying desperately to catch his breath. In fact, during that very encounter, I finally understood one of the lessons the great Sparka had taught me in those days of my youth. You see, he referred to the kick to the upper part of the belly as the troll in the moon. Fandral frowned. Why would he call it that? That, in fact, was my question to him, and so I did query him on the very subject. But he did not answer, and I, a brash, impetuous youth at the time, did not see it. However, when I kicked the brigand in the belly, he doubled over, unable to catch his breath. Then at last I understood the story, for you see, a troll is not a particularly bright specimen, and a troll might see his reflection of the moon in the water, and grab for it. But the very act of grabbing it disrupts the water, and the reflection disappears, at least until the water settles, at which point the moon returns. The troll continues to grab for the moon, but is never able to grasp it. His head now swimming, Fandral asked, and what has this to do with a kick to the stomach? Volstagg grinned. A properly placed kick will cause its victim to double over with an inability to catch his breath. He can no more gain a foothold on his breathing than that troll may gain a grip on the moon's reflection. Nodding, Fandral said, Ah, I see. And that is how I put the lessons of Sparka to use in that tavern. I find parts of this story difficult to credit, old friend, Fandral said with a chuckle. Only parts of it? Hogun muttered as he gazed round the corner of the latest bend in the path. Ha! Fandral acknowledged Hogun's skepticism, and then continued. First of all, I doubt that this Sparka truly exists. Oh, he does, Hogun said. Fandral did a double-take. How's that? Volstagg speaks true when he says that Sparka was a master of the art of the kick. He was a legend amongst my people. According to that legend, his hands had been badly broken and did not heal properly, so he was unable to fight with them, nor could he properly hold a weapon. So he learned how to balance himself and trained himself to kick in a manner that would cause the most harm to his opponents. "I am not surprised," Volstagg said, "that Sparka's fame reached the land of your birth, Hogun." "Oh yes," Hogun said, "and those stories all ended with Sparka's death at the hand of Hrimthursar, right before Odin defeated him." Fandral whirled his head round to face Volstagg from over Gulltopper's rump. "As I recall, you were an infant when Odin did battle with Hrimthursar." "Bah!" Volstagg muttered. "What does it matter? It was all some time ago. In any case, that was the least of my problems. You see, I had thought the brigand to be alone, but he had friends." "It is the way of brigands to have friends," Fandral said thoughtfully, "though I cannot for the life of me comprehend how that is so. After all, brigands are often disagreeable." "So are their friends," Hogun muttered. "Indeed," Volstagg chuckled, "and these friends were quite distressing. They surrounded me and informed me that they would be hastening my journey to Hela's realm." "Obviously," Fandral said dryly, "they were unsuccessful." "Well, obviously, yes. I did warn them. I said, 'Be wary, my friends, for the Lion of Asgard's disagreement with your friend is over and done with. I have no quarrel with you, and it would pain me greatly to cause any of you harm.' Naturally, the brigands did not heed my sage advice. Brigands almost never do. And they challenged me. So I did, very reluctantly, thrash them as well." "All three of them?" Fandral said. "I believe I said there were 6, Volstagg replied with a nod. Fandral grinned. "In fact, you gave no number, but I'm not surprised at you raising the figure for my guess." "Regardless, I grabbed 2 of them and slammed their fool heads together." "An impressive accomplishment," Fandral said, "with both hands bound behind your back." Without missing a beat, Volstagg said, "Oh, by the time the 10 friends had surrounded me, I had had the opportunity to rend my bonds with the assistance of a kitchen wench in the tavern who was carrying a knife. In any event, what matters is that all dozen of them fell by my hand, at which point I gladly bought a round for everyone in the tavern who was still conscious." "Fine tale," Fandral said, "worthy of being made into a song." "Yes, well, I did approach the bard who plays at that tavern about putting the story to song, but he seemed strangely uninterested." "Imagine—" "Hold!" Hogun interrupted Fandral, holding up his hand and bringing Kohler to a halt. Behind him, the other 2 also stopped. "There's an The rest of Hogun's words were cut off by a giant log that swung down from a nearby tree, knocking both Hogun and Fandral off their mounts. A troll leapt down from the same tree, cackling. "A prize, a prize, a prize! Nay, 2 prizes! 2 Aesir are mine, with the rest to follow." "Hardly, knave," Volstagg said. "You may have defeated Hogun the Grim and Fandral the Dashing, but you still have Volstagg the Voluminous to contend with. You will find that defeating me is a far greater challenge." "No challenge at all," the troll cried. "Asgard is ripe for the taking." "Your fellow troll, Baugi, made such an attempt not long ago, and, with some small aid from my comrades, I did thrash him and banish him to the realm below." "Ah, yes, but Baugi was a fool, and I am not. Besides, Asgard is weak. Thor is abed following a battle with Hrungnir, and Sif is the same after warring against dragons. As for Balder, he is trapped in Nornheim, no doubt a prisoner of Karnilla. And now the warriors 3 have been brought low. Tell me, fat one, would now not be the best time to take Asgard?" "You have not brought low the warriors 3, my dear troll, for as you can see, only 2 lie wounded on the path, thanks to your treacherous attack. We are not referred to as the warriors 2, after all." "And what will you do that these 2 could not?" "Oh, I could easily wring your neck, but that would not be sporting, now would it? After all, the Lion of Asgard's fury is a terror to behold, and I would not unleash it if it were not necessary." The troll moved toward Volstagg, who was still mounted on Ironshanks. "Sporting, do you say? Do you propose a wager?" Volstagg had in fact been stalling in the hope that Hogun or Fandral would come to their senses and leap into the battle from behind, thus catching the troll unawares, but they lay still upon the dirt. He was grateful that the log had not, at least, struck them with enough intensity to knock them over the cliff. Even as strong as they both were, Volstagg's boon companions would like to have been killed by such a fall. However, he was hardly about to pass up the opportunity the troll was providing. "A wager indeed! Shall we compete in feats of strength? Feats of bravery? Feats of appetite?" "I would hardly engage in a contest of appetites with one of your girth, fat one." Unable to help himself, Volstagg smirked. You are wiser than you appear, Troll, though that would not be difficult. I doubt the same could be said for you, as it is said that one who boasts is a great fool indeed. So I challenge you to a battle of wits. We shall each ask the other a riddle. Volstagg nodded. A fair and good competition. If you are ill to the task of answering my riddle, the three of you shall go over the cliff, and I will continue to Asgard and conquer it. If you're able, yes. And should your reply to my conundrum prove to be incorrect, you'll return to the realm below and allow the three of us to go on our merry way. And what way might that be, voluminous one? Is that your first riddle, Troll, or an attempt to gain intelligence? The Troll grinned. I would never seek intelligence from you, vainglorious Aesir. Because you know the Lion of Asgard would never reveal such secrets to one such as you? No, because the Lion of Asgard is, as I said, a fool, which I will prove ere long. Volstagg chuckled. If we each answer each other's riddle, what then? We continue until one does not. Agreed. The Troll moved closer to the prone forms of Hogun and Fandral. Do not attempt to cheat, Asgardian, for if I detect any indication of such, over the cliff your friends shall go. My good Troll, the Lion of Asgard would never cheat. Speak your riddle, and I shall dazzle you with my quick delivery of the answer. Very well. What begins its journey on 4 legs, continues it on 2, and ends it on 3. Volstagg shook his head. If the Troll thought him this dense, the contest would end quickly. A mortal journeying through life, 4 legs while crawling as an infant, 2 legs through childhood and adulthood, and with a cane as a 3rd leg in the infirmity of old age. Perhaps he thought I would struggle with the final aspect of that, but I have known many mortals of Midgard in my time, and seen them age and die. Very well, the Troll said bitterly, for he had indeed believed that Volstagg's immortality would prevent him from eliciting the meaning of the final third of the riddle. Take your turn. A man came upon a family inside a fishing boat. He asked the family, How fare you? In response they said, What we catch we throw back, but what we do not catch we keep. To what were they referring? The Troll rubbed his chin and then grinned. Lice. Well played, Volstagg said. He had not expected a denizen of the realm below to know of the difficulties that those who sailed had with head lice. Volstagg himself had had plenty of experiences with lice during the seafaring of his long-ago youth. Leaning in closer to Volstagg, the Troll asked, What has a single eye, but can see nothing? Assuming you are not making a jest at the expense of the Allfather, I would say a storm. Snorting, the Troll said, I would have expected you to say a potato, but your answer will do. Volstagg stroked his beard thoughtfully. What runs but never walks, has a mouth but does not speak, has a bed but cannot sleep, and has a head but is incapable of weeping. This one stumped the Troll for many seconds, and for a moment Volstagg allowed himself to think he had won. But then the Troll snapped his fingers and cried out, A river! Indeed, Volstagg said dolefully. How far may a stag walk into the forest of Sigurd? My children could answer that one, Volstagg said disdainfully. Halfway. After that, the stag is walking out of the forest. Feed me and I grow, but give me water, and I die. What am I? A fire. Where may you find roads with no carts, forests with no trees, villages with no houses, and rivers with no water? A map. What has arms but no hands, and a face but no head? A clock. What has a head and a tail, but no body? A coin. Volstagg was actually starting to enjoy this, though he was always mindful that the lives of Hogun and Fandral hung in the balance. What question can never be answered in the affirmative? The Troll was at a loss at first, but when he turned away to ponder, he saw Fandral and Hogun still insensate, and the answer came to him. Are you asleep? What turns everything around, but does not move? Volstagg actually struggled with that one a moment before it came to him. A mirror. I am a container with no corner or side, but I hold a golden treasure inside me. Where am I? An egg, like which I will break you when I win this contest, fat one. Volstagg chuckled. Sticks and stones, droll Troll. He did not add that this was one contest where words would hurt. Speak your next conundrum. The Troll sighed. It is boneless, straining against that which covers it. It may be gripped with one's hands in an endeavor to bring satisfaction. A woman may cover it with her apron. What is it? Dough, Volstagg said simply. You didn't disappoint on that occasion, the Troll said with a chuckle. Out of the corner of his eye, Volstagg noticed that Hogun was stirring. And so he decided to use the most difficult riddle he knew. In truth, he had not expected to need it, for he had never dreamed that this, or indeed any, troll would have the intellectual wherewithal to last this long in such a contest. Volstagg had heard this riddle centuries ago on Midgard, and he challenged each of his children with it once they were old enough to figure it out. Hildi was the only one of his children to get it right away. An Aesir arrives at 2 doors. One door will lead to Asgard and freedom, the other to Niflheim and death. But the warrior knows not which is which. Each door has a guardian, one of whom always lies, the other of whom always tells the truth. But again, the Aesir does not know which is which. What is the one question the warrior may ask that will lead him to the door to Asgard? The troll frowned. What? Shall I repeat? No! The troll paced angrily and muttered to himself. One lies, one tells the truth, but you don't know which is which. So you can ask them anything, but you don't know if it's the liar or the truth-sayer. Volstagg watched with amusement as the troll turned the problem over in his head, pacing back and forth in an ever longer parabola, to the point where he wondered whether the troll might pace all the way over the cliff. His own older children had struggled with this riddle also, and in fact the troll's mutterings and perambulations were almost a perfect match for those of Alaric, when Volstagg had posed the riddle to him years before. The troll proposed and rejected to himself many possible questions for the hypothetical warrior to ask. At last, his shoulders slumped. He ceased his pacing and stood before Volstagg, abashed. I do not know the answer. Tell me. Smiling, Volstagg said, The question the warrior must pose is to ask one of the guardians the following. If I ask your fellow guardian what door he guards, what will he say? If he says Asgard, then the guardian you ask guards Asgard, for either he is the one who tells the truth, in which case his companion will lie and say Asgard, or he is the one who lies, in which case the other guardian is the truth speaker, and the guardian to whom you spoke has lied about what his companion will say. If the answer is Niflheim, then the other door leads to Asgard for the same reason. You tricked me! Volstagg drew himself up to his full height. I did no such thing. I posed a riddle, and you failed to answer it. Now then, return yourself to the realm below. Fandral, Hogun, and I have important business of Asgard to attend to, and your foolishness is keeping us from it. The troll, however, was unimpressed by Volstagg's bellowing. I repeat, Aesir, you tricked me, weaving fell magic with your words, and I shall not stand for it. You will die, as will your fellows. I think not. Whirling around at the new voice, the troll saw that Fandral was standing upright, pointing Fimbuldraugr at the troll's chest. So you're awake, Golden Hair. Not for long, will you? Volstagg did wager with you, and you did agree to abide by it. It is difficult enough to trust the word of trolls, but if you go back on your promise now, the word of trolls will evermore remain nothing throughout the 9 worlds. The troll hesitated. Volstagg added, Will you truly damn all trolls with your actions? Your kind have always fulfilled their bargains. To destroy that tradition now would... Enough! The troll shook his head. I will return to the realm below as promised, but know that someday I will have my vengeance upon Volstagg the Voluminous for his verbal trickery this day. Will you now? Fandral asked in a dangerous voice. As you so generously reminded me, Asgardian, we trolls are known for our bargains. I will allow you passage through the mountain unmolested, but I also promise you this. The insult I have borne this day will ne'er be forgotten by me or mine. He stared at Volstagg. There will come a day when you least expect it, fat one, that you will find the blade of a troll penetrating your corpulence. That day will be your last. With that, the troll leapt back up into the tree from which he'd engaged his ambush. Disagreeable fellow, is he not? Volstagg asked. From the ground near the cliff, a moan escaped Hogun's lips. Fandral dashed to his side and helped the grim one to his feet. Are you well, old friend? Slowly, Hogun nodded. The ringing in my head should abate with time, and even should it not, it would matter little, for we must be away and quickly. With each hour that passes without the golden apples, Loki's spell brings the realm eternal closer to ruin. As he mounted Iron Shanks, Volstagg harumphed. Well, we would have arrived by now if you two weren't lounging about, leaving me to do all the hard work. Rolling his eyes as he mounted Gulltopper, Fandral said, Naturally. Leaping atop Kohler, Hogun urgently said, Let us go! We must tarry no longer! And so the trio rode up the mountain path. The road was too narrow for a full gallop, but they did canter much faster than they had earlier, out of fear for how Asgard was faring without the apples.
Marvel's Warriors 3, Godhood's End, will be available this month from Joe Books, both in stores and via all the usual online retailers. Books 1 and 2 are already available in both print and ebook form. Other new work of mine that's on sale now are the 3 Super City Cops ebook novellas, Avenging Amethyst, Undercover Blues, and Secret Identities, which I talked about on DKR 4 episodes ago. Baker Street Irregulars, an anthology of alternate Sherlock Holmes stories, which I talked about 2 episodes ago, and which has my story Identity. Aliens Bug Hunt, based on the movie franchise, which I talked about last episode, and which has my story Deep Background. My Stargate SG-1 novel, Khalees Wrath. And also coming out this month is the anthology TV Gods, Summer Programming, which also features the Norse gods, in this case the aforementioned Key West setting starring Cassie Zukov, Weirdness Magnet. That story is called Behind the Wheel. It will be launching at Balticon 51, which leads me nicely into where I'll be appearing convention-wise upcoming in 2017. Over Memorial Day weekend, that's the 26th to the 29th of May, I will be one of the many author guests at Balticon 51 in Baltimore, Maryland. Go to balticon.org for more information, and we will be launching TV God Summer Programming there. I'm going to have a table in the dealer's room. I'll be sharing the eSpec Books table, and I'll have various and sundry books for sale, including, I'm hoping, the Warriors 3 book, and my wife, Ren Sims, will also be selling her handmade Geek Bears and Geek Pillows. From the 30th of June to the 2nd of July, basically Independence Day weekend, I will be the Toastmaster at In Conjunction in Indianapolis, Indiana. Go to inconjunction.org for more information. And then the following weekend, the 7th through the 9th of July, I will be one of the many author guests at Shore Leave 39 in Cookiesville, Maryland. Go to shore-leave.com for more info there. I'm also planning to hit DragonCon in September, New York Comic Con in October, and both Atomicon and PhilCon in November, and there's probably going to be other appearances that will happen along the way. Check out the show notes at deadkitchenradio.wordpress.com for links to all those conventions, as well as ordering links for all the books that I just mentioned. Dead Kitchen Radio is a monthly podcast discussing all things crad. See us online at the aforementioned deadkitchenradio.wordpress.com, which includes show notes and other nifty stuff. You can also like the Dead Kitchen Radio page on Facebook. Comments can be left at the WordPress site, at the Facebook page, or to me at email at keith@decandido.net. You can also comment at my blog or my Facebook page. You can find gateways to those places at my website at decandido.net. You can also follow me on Twitter at Kradec, Kradec, or on Instagram at Crad418. Dead Kitchen Radio is recorded by Keith R. A. DeCandido, produced and edited by John S. Drew, with music by Stephen Rosenhaus. Dead Kitchen Radio is part of the Chronic Rift Network. For more information about the network, go to chronicrift.com. Until next time, this is Keith DeCandido saying good night.
Now what goes will come around again, and forgive my being crass, but you know those boots of karma will just kick them in the ass, so just relax, sit down, and have another drink on me, and have another drink on me.